this last one that we have here was on Priya's article this week, and it's about how research on negotiation shows how trust can be improved amongst teams in the workplace. And really the background of this is the authors here sought to utilize the process of structured dialogue through which teams can establish cooperative interdependence between themselves. They also study here, they focus a little bit on superordinate goal dialogues as a way to further improve the outcomes surrounding trust and dialogue. And so what they look at here is they presented these following hypotheses, one being that subordinate goal dialogues between teams will increase joint gain. The second being superordinate goal dialogues between teams will increase trust. And then for the third, this two-part is subordinate goal dialogues between teams will increase joint gain because they promote trust, which increases the use of Q&A strategy. And then secondly, subordinate goal dialogues between teams will increase joint gain because they promote trust, which decreases the use of substantiation and offer strategy. And so the methods of this study were, they conducted 4 studies. And the first study, they had 341 undergraduate business school students that participated. There was a team condition who were made to negotiate an adaptive version of the game Sweet Shops and require them to assume the role of a bakery or ice cream shop owner. They were divided into 2 teams, in teams of 2 and dyads. In study 2, they looked at MBA students, had 284 MBA students enrolled in a negotiations course at a global business school. The groups were randomly allocated to a pre-negotiation superordinate goal dialogue condition or a control condition. And what they negotiated was a cartoon and represented a buyer or a seller and negotiated 4 issues concerning the syndication of a television show. In the third study, they had 582 MBA students enrolled in an introductory leadership course at a global business school. These MBA students were randomly divided into study groups and then into 2 teams. They represented a team of directors and a team of producers in an exercise adapted from the player negotiation, where they had to negotiate 7 issues associated with the production of a film. Finally, for study 4, they had 487 undergraduate business students randomly allocated participants to groups and teams and randomly assigned roles between teams to one of 2 conditions. They had a pre-negotiation superordinate goal dialogues condition or a pre-negotiation control allowing for schmoozing. And the task here was the same as study 1. And the results of this were that in the first study, consistent with the first hypothesis, the joint gain was higher when teams were engaged in superordinate goal dialogues. The second was superordinate goal dialogues between teams did increase trust. And the third study, the positive effect of superordinate goal dialogues is robust in a setting where team members know each other and have the willingness to pursue these goals collectively. And then the final study showed that teams engaging in superordinate goal dialogues achieve higher joint gain because these dialogues develop trust, which then leads them to decrease their use of a competitive S&O strategy, which is the substantiation and offer strategy. And Anupriya took a few things away from this study. One being the importance of encouraging goal dialogues. The researchers observed that teams who engaged in dialogue had better joint gain and trust. They also concluded that merely providing an opportunity to communicate is not always sufficient to facilitate cooperation. So negotiating teams need to plan both the nature and timing of the discussions to facilitate trust, cooperation, and joint gain. So a good way to promote teams and departments at the workplace to engage in dialogue intentionally can be through design, planned inter-team dialogue days, and involving neutral third-party negotiators to lead the discussion frequently as well. And then second, focusing on the element of diversity and inclusion workshops that can help improve trust between employees of different backgrounds, races, nationalities, and their ability to have a more eased dialogue across departments. And then a quick plug that PPS offers training for workplaces in diversity and inclusion, as well as conflict resolution, which can help with this. So I thought there's an interesting study on specifically within the field of negotiation, and how superordinate goal dialogues about a superordinate goal can help increase trust and increase joint gain as well.
Look at Anupriya putting in their call to action. All right, so real quick question. The superordinate goal dialogues is that like a structure? They gave them kind of a structured way of dialoguing about shared goals.
That's what I'm seeing here. Is they? I can look, let me look deeper into the study just to give you an accurate answer.
That's kind of like what I was gathering from this. Is it sounds like it's intentional dialogue, like we're talking about, I mean, this is specifically to creating a goal, but it's intentional, generally speaking, that hey, let's have this dialogue about a goal, which is XYZ, you know?
So they give them some structure as to how to have the dialogue. Is that?
Yeah, because her takeaway, she mentions, hence a good way to promote teams and departments at the workplace to engage in dialogue intentionally can be through design, planned inter-team dialogue days, and involving neural third-party negotiators to lead the discussion. So I'm assuming, but it sounds like that she's taking that though from what the study discussed as their ways of how they do that.
Right. And then the competitive strategy, what was it? Substantiate an offer or something like that? What do you know what that was, Noah?
Yeah, I'm looking at the article right now. No, you're good. They said that distributive strategy. They I think looked at how distributive strategy, and they said distributive strategy includes behaviors such as attempts to persuade the counterpart to make concessions, which has been referred to as the substantiation and offer strategy. Versus, and they kind of compared that to the Q&A strategy, which is question and answer, which it includes asking and answering questions about negotiators' interests and priorities, which is more of an integrative strategy.
I'm thinking for, just applying this to the workplace, in order to have something like this, to foster something like this, right, between different departments or even the same department as a team, it would take a leader or an outside facilitator, as she suggests, which is what we do, right, to bring them together, bring the team individuals together and decipher what is this superordinate goal. And why does that take precedence over anything else that they're working on at that moment? Like, so that has to be made. And I'm thinking that highlights someone within the team, like a leader within the team, that would make that first move.
Yeah, actually, to that point, Sarah, looking at that point of the superordinate goal, I did look into what that manipulation looks like for the study. And that this kind of, I think, feeds into your point here. But what they did was they had one group, they asked one group, essentially, they asked them and gave them 5 minutes to discuss the following questions. What will be important for all parties? Why? And then what do you want to have achieved for all parties after the discussion? So you're starting off with that point of focusing on that. And maybe that's kind of that leadership standpoint that you're talking about.
Yeah, or outside facilitators, right? I mean, it's essentially kind of what we would do in our processes, like a peacemaking process, where you're trying to get parties to decipher, okay, what is the intention of this dialogue? What are we focusing on? Let's really create a superordinate goal.
And I like how this study kind of looks at different dimensions here, because they're looking at there's sort of a cognitive emotional component, which is trust, that's being built, and that's sort of a super important element, right, that we try to work on with, and it makes sense that superordinate goals would help build trust. And then there's a sort of actionable behavioral element too, which is like a Q&A strategy versus a different type of strategy, which is more of the contributive strategy. So yeah, all the elements come together: curiosity, collaboration through that Q&A with trust, superordinate goal dialogue. It's a good takeaway to how to I think that's kind of like what we do, right? But just sort of supporting the notion that we facilitating dialogues around shared goals and common values creates trust, and that can help lead to better outcomes.
I also I appreciate that she kind of highlights having diversity and inclusion workshops frequently too, because that's a huge, I don't know that the study talked at all about that, but I think just as her takeaway, I understand, again, she's kind of acknowledging that those with different backgrounds, nationalities, religions, races, a lot of times that fosters more conflict or disagreements or more like communication tendencies. So she's saying, you know, in order, like, because I already know that that happens, to alleviate that, I also suggest this. And so I think that's a great takeaway.